And I've got to tell you, this market is just a grind these days. You probably have noticed. I think this is like the seventh day where like the spider in particular is just grinding and grinding away in this tiny little range. There's no direction anymore. Obviously, earnings season is weeks away, and there's been no meaningful economic news or reports or anything like that. So people are just churning and burning right now. In spite of that, dug up what I think are a few interesting charts for you. Very broadly here, we've got our multi-decade channel, and the midline is the bell of the ball right now. Prices have been floating just above that midline, and as you can see, we've got 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, almost 8, but let's just call it 7 days. We sort of got thrust above the midline here. So for the past 7 trading days, we have just been lingering, plus or minus, a tenth of a percent in this dreadful zone right here. I just burning time, and just nothing's really inspiring any direction on this. As I said yesterday, it's possible to drill down and find opportunities, but it takes a little work, and that's part of the reason I'm here, to try to help you find ideas. I continue to be very fond of transports on the short side. The bearish pattern is not complete. It's about 90% complete. We have to cross below this dashed green line to finish the pattern up. Maybe it'll happen, maybe it won't. If you've watched me a little bit recently, United Airlines UAL is my favorite amongst those components. I've got puts on UAL. I'm also kind of fond, I don't have a position, but I continue to like United Parcel Service, UPS. The reason I'm not as enthusiastic about this as I am about the likes UAL is a couple-fold. The pattern's not quite as clean. It's already come down recently a lot in price. It's burned off a good $45 in value since the beginning 2022. To be sure, United also has lost a lot of its own value. Its recent top is very clean, kind of easy to read. So that's why I've opted toward that one. Overseas, briefly, EFA. This is outside of North America. We've still been pretty range bound on this. It would turn short-term bullish crossing above this red dashed line here, and it turned bearish if we cut below 77.36 on the EFA. As with our own markets, it's just kind of lingering in this tight little range right here, just uninspired. China doesn't seem to be getting any fuel either for its own launch. It had peaked here back on the 17th. We fell, got close to the supporting trend line, and boing, boing, boing. We've just been floating above it the whole time. So the trend line has provided support, but it's just getting weaker and weaker. This is a descending supporting trend line, so you can stay above it and just go down in perpetuity if you want to. So this isn't looking so sharp for China. Also haven't looked at retail in a while. Just want to mention XRT, the retail ETF, has held its own support as well. We had been range bound here for a long time, years actually, just banging between these broad levels of support way down here and resistance way up here. We briefly got above it, fell again, and then this time seems to have kind of taken. We've pushed above. We have held support a number of times on this. But that range still has meaning. If we broke below it again, that would be kind of the defining zone for XRT. As it is now, support has held. I didn't have a position, but I was kind of pleased to see this work out, and here's why. Back on January 3, right near the beginning of the year, maybe the second trading day into the year, I pointed out Walgreens Boots Alliance WBA, and the reason I did was because of what's called a right triangle pattern. This had lost a lot of its value already too. It had peaked really around 70 or so back about 8 years ago, and it fell and fell and fell and fell. And then we had this right triangle to work with. So here's the resistance line here, here's the base. We cracked below it, fell hard, and then went blasting higher. Right along here, right around there was January 3. And I mentioned this as a prospective bearish play. It was around 20, it was over 25 then. Well, we've got banged down nice and hard on this one. We're down to 11 at this point. So over the course of just not even 6 months, this has lost about 60% of its value or so. Well, like I say, I wasn't in this. If you were, congrats. This has been a terrific play. Took a while, but it's been a fairly straight shot down. This right here, this bar that I'm pointing to, that's the precise day that I made mention of it. And it's been a pretty steady tumbler, as you can see. Lower highs, lower lows, and then a big gap down today. They were all over the news. I think that they're going to something like shut down a quarter of all their stores, something like 57,000 people getting laid off. So Walgreens, big sour note on that. So the right triangle pattern definitely gave us a huge heads up. But like I said, it took a few months to transpire. Rivian had a huge day yesterday, but when you and I spoke to each other yesterday, it had been fading that. It's fading it a bit more. Strong support, I would say, is down here at this base. In fact, I would say that gap is a very reliable base for support. As with here, these can eventually get ruined. Yesterday, in spite of all the hoopla about the Volkswagen partnership, multi-billion-dollar partnership, and a good earnings report, the long-term shape and form of the chart isn't particularly inspiring. If it did find support down at that gap and stayed above it, that would be a little bit interesting. If this is going to turn around, and it may, if this is going to turn around long-term, it's going to take some time to heal because this is a pretty busted up chart right now. By the way, speaking of EVs, Nikola, haven't mentioned this in eons, but another hard tumble here, down over 17% lifetime low. They did a reverse split. We've talked about reverse splits before. They don't tend to really make any difference long-term. And so on a reverse split adjusted basis, this fellow's fallen from almost $3,000 down to a few dollars at this point. So not sure what the news is, but looking pretty dire there. You may have heard about this funny thing too. Roaring Kitty sort of fell quiet for a while in the GME GameStop land. Evidently today, his X account's pretty quiet, but today he tweeted out a picture of a dog's face as a cartoon. That was it. There's no text, no nothing, just a funny picture of a dog's face. And I guess somebody decided, maybe he's going for Chewy.com now. So Chewy went kind of bananas here, as you can see. Huge increase in volume. Tens of millions of shares traded that would not have traded otherwise, and an enormous spike above resistance there. Strange times we live in, that just some dude can send out a funny picture of a dog's face, cartoon style, move markets. There it is. Just kind of a strange anecdote, bizarre times we live in. Micron had earnings report yesterday, and they fell. They've recovered from their depths, but still down pretty good, over $8, almost 6%. So definitely throwing a bit of cold water on that hot semiconductor sector. NVIDIA, in turn, cooling off a bit, down a couple of dollars here, about 1 2/3%. And I would say very short term, we've got resistance at yesterday's high, like so. And SMH is also down a touch, not too bad, but here too, I would say that that little dashed line I've drawn yesterday's high is a pretty good, very short-term level of resistance to watch. Back in the day, I would talk about what I call the ABC stocks, the accidental beneficiaries of COVID. One of the big ones was this one here, Biotech. Hadn't looked at it in a long, long time. This had a series of scallops, just stronger and stronger and stronger. And it's just kind of amazing how over the course of time, it's sort of just burned off all that good stuff down to about 80 now, having gotten to around, about 500 or so. I guess kind of a one-hit wonder here in terms of their product line, but just hadn't seen this in a long time. It was a very hot stock few years back, but you can see that without any fresh disease to treat, I guess it's sort of fallen off the radar. As I mentioned, and as you well know, tonight, very exciting, the first of 2 presidential debates. Normally, stocks and individual stocks wouldn't really be at play with that, but it will be a little interesting to see what DJT, the symbol, does tomorrow post those debates. This has been a sweeping stock here. It's had tremendous range. Here, for example, it was up above $70. And then it got down as low as about a third of that. It looked like McDonald's arches here just bouncing all over the place. So just want to mention that as an aside. Be interesting to see what that does tomorrow on the heels of the widely watched debate. Gold, a little bullish here. Have a island reversal pattern. So we've gone leaping above. The range still counts here. Support down here, resistance up here. Seems a lot of markets are range bound these days. So you can see this kind of grinding away ever since it entered this range. Way back at the beginning of April. So for an entire quarter, this has been just bouncing along within that range. Energy down a whole penny right now, XLE. We zoom in here. Just wanted to highlight this again because it's a little interesting in terms of its own series of lower highs and lower lows. But like I said at the top of the program, not a lot of dynamism right now. Things are just sort of kind of in a wait and see mode. Within this, Schlumberger is showing some strength. And provided that it does not pierce this 47.67 level, That's looking okay still on the short side. Bonds remain key to watch. This is TLT. We're a little green on this right now, up about 1/3% or so. This red line is crucial. The best things the equity bulls want to see would be a piercing of that resistance, get the rally going stronger on bonds, get interest rates down again, fuel hopes for some interest rate cuts that would help equities out. But as it is now, we're still below that resistance line. Once again, between the PCE tomorrow, maybe even the debate, it'll help inform what that's going to do next. Oh, I'm out of time. One last one. Look at this crazy thing. That's the PCE in a cumulative state from when it started being recorded way back in the 50s. And as you can see, let's flip it upside down. That's kind of what your purchasing power has done across the course of time. So you know what? Whether tomorrow is 0.2 or 0.3 or even 0.0, it doesn't matter.